APA versus the Public Enemy. Let's start our list with the most iconic in-ring real fight of all time, when things got way too heated between Public Enemy and the APA. Public Enemy, which included Johnny Grunge and Rocco Rock, were ECW's hardcore darlings, straight out of the land of barbed wire and smashed tables. These guys were huge with fans, who loved them so much they'd storm the ring to celebrate. Then you've got the APA, which included Farouk and Bradshaw, aka JBL, two no-nonsense brawlers who would knock your head off as soon as you look at them. This all went down on WWF Heat, March 7th, 1999. On paper, it was just another tag team match. But oh man, it turned into something else entirely. Bradshaw spilled the tea years later on the Stories with Briscoe and Bradshaw podcast, chatting with former WWE ref Jimmy Corderas, who was stuck in the middle of this chaos. So here's the deal. Both teams got the same finish from the WWE office, which was that Public Enemy was supposed to go through a table. Standard stuff, right? Except right before the match, Public Enemy flat out refused. "Nah, we're not doing the table spot," they said, according to Bradshaw. No explanation, no backup plan, just a hard no. Bradshaw was like, okay, and told Farouk, who was not amused. His response? "Well, we'll bring the table to them." And that's when the gloves came off, quite literally. The APA started laying into Public Enemy with some seriously stiff moves. We're talking unprotected chair shots, brutal clotheslines, power bombs, punches, kicks, the whole kitchen sink. It wasn't a wrestling match anymore, it was a straight-up fight.
Dropping the steps for a little bit of... Oh my... Oh! Gosh!
Poor Jimmy Corderas, the ref, could feel the tension before the bell even rang. He said Farouk and Bradshaw came out looking like they were ready to throw down for real. As soon as they hit the ring, boom, it was snug, Corderas recalled. Public Enemy was getting their butts handed to them, and Jimmy was just standing there thinking, what the hell is happening? It got uglier as the match went on. Even after Corderas called for the bell, the APA kept the beatdown going. Both he and Bradshaw thought the fight might spill backstage, but surprisingly, Public Enemy shook their hands afterward and thanked them for the match. Still, it wasn't enough to save their jobs. A month later, Public Enemy was out of WWE. Let's just say it was a rough night for Johnny Grunge and Rocco Rock. Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels. How could these two not be on the list? They were two of the best wrestlers in the 90s and had one of the greatest rivalries ever. Even though they really hated each other, they tried to work together for the business. But things blew up when the Heartbreak Kid hinted that Bret Hart was having an affair with WWE diva Sunny. The funny part? It was actually HBK who was involved with her. That promo caused real problems for Bret, as this was the time when his wife started confronting him about the rumor. When Bret went to Michaels to clear the air, things got physical. Bret grabbed a big chunk of Michaels' hair and pulled it out. This was just one of several moments that eventually led to the infamous Montreal Screwjob, Vince McMahon versus Bret Hart. Right after the Montreal Screwjob went down, Bret Hart confronted Vince McMahon to get answers about what really happened in the ring that night. There's no footage of what went down, but everyone there says Hart hit McMahon hard enough to knock him off his feet, give him a black eye, and even sprain his ankle. Hart was already on his way out of WWE, and he had every reason to be furious. McMahon had promised no tricks during Bret's final match, but then he pulled the rug out from under him. So Hart decided to take matters into his own hands. This whole drama was later captured in the documentary Wrestling with Shadows.
I'll tell you the truth. It was one punch.
Yeah.
And it was a good punch.
After that, Hart headed to WCW while McMahon turned into one of wrestling's biggest villains. More than anything else in WWE history, this moment blurred the lines between real life and the scripted world, between what's planned and what's real. Rikishi versus Russ McCullough. Man, things got wild when Russ McCullough, a massive 6'11", 350-pound ex-NFL linebacker, stepped into the ring with the usually happy-go-lucky Rikishi. You know Rikishi, right? The big dude with a larger-than-life personality who loves, introducing opponents to his backside. But this time, oh, he wasn't laughing. This all went down in the Heartland Wrestling Association, a WWF developmental territory from the late 90s that gave us names like John Cena. Whatever happened to that guy? Anyway, Rikishi was in a six-man tag match, teaming with the Island Boys against McCullough, Haku, and Elix Skipper. Sounds like a fun night, right? Well, not quite. There was this moment in the match where McCullough was supposed to hold Rikishi in place for a killer Savate kick from Haku. Classic wrestling move where one guy holds, the other swings, and the guy being held ducks. Except McCullough didn't let go. Rikishi ate that kick full force, and let me tell you, he was not happy about it. What happened next was pure chaos. Rikishi, who was fuming from his ears, grabbed a steel chair and went to town on McCullough, smacking him 6 hard times. The last one, right to the face. McCullough hit the mat, rolled out of the ring, and hightailed it up the ramp. The match was thrown into a total mess. That chair-swinging rampage cost McCullough big time. He got cut from his WWF developmental contract in 2001. And if that wasn't enough, a few years later, he teamed up with former WWE wrestlers Luther Reigns and Ryan Sakota to sue WWE, claiming brain damage from their time in the ring. The lawsuit didn't go anywhere, though, as it was dismissed. Kurt Angle versus Daniel Puder. WWE's live segments with folks from Diva Search or Tough Enough were always kind of wild since they weren't trained wrestlers. But one night got way crazier than usual when Kurt Angle hosted a segment with some Tough Enough contestants. Angle beat one of the guys as part of some contest they were doing and then called out anyone else who wanted a shot. That's when Daniel Puder, a former UFC fighter, stepped up. Out of nowhere, he tried to lock Kurt in a Kimura and it caught everyone off guard.
He's got a key lock there, Puder, trying to get a key lock.
The ref quickly counted a pin for Angle before things got out of hand, and Kurt was furious after it happened. Vader versus Ken Shamrock. It was a total train wreck when Ken Shamrock, the MMA badass, made his WWF debut against the absolute legend Vader at In Your House, 15 in 1997. Ken Shamrock was a pioneer, bridging the gap between MMA and pro wrestling during the WWF's Wild Attitude era. The guy was a blueprint for future stars like Bobby Fish, Kyle O'Reilly, and Matt Riddle. Meanwhile, Vader, aka Leon White, was a straight-up monster. He'd already crushed it in Japan and left his mark in both WCW and WWF. When these two beasts stepped into the ring, you knew sparks were gonna fly. Boy, did it get messy fast. Shamrock, coming from the shoot-fighting world, wasn't pulling his punches. He threw a few that connected hard enough to break Vader's nose. In wrestling, you're supposed to work your punches so nobody gets hurt, but Ken wasn't playing by those rules. Vader, not one to back down, fired back with a lariat from the corner that nearly took Shamrock's head off. I'm talking lights out, see you in next week kind of impact. Somehow, they pulled it together and got the match back on track. In the end, Vader tapped out to Shamrock's ankle lock, but not before they'd turned that ring into a legit battlefield. Macho Man Randy Savage versus Jake the Snake Roberts. Let me tell you about the absolute insanity that went down between Randy Savage and Jake Roberts in the WWF back in late 1991. Their feud was pure fire as it was electric, intense, and downright personal. Jake was on a mission to get under the Macho Man's skin, and he was pulling no punches. He'd mess up Savage's matches, ambush him on the entrance ramp, and even went as far as threatening Miss Elizabeth. Yeah, Jake was playing dirty. But things hit a whole new level of crazy during an episode of Superstars of Wrestling. Picture this. Jake's got Savage trapped, his arms tangled up in the ropes, completely helpless. Then Jake brings out his new snake, Lucifer, and, get this, directs it to bite Savage's arm. Now, this was planned, but holy cow, it went off the rails. That snake clamped down and wouldn't let go. For a gut-wrenching 34 seconds, everyone watching, at home and in the arena, was frozen in horror as blood, bright crimson red, poured out of Savage's arm. It was like a scene from a vampire flick. Savage later spilled the beans on just how wild it was. "My arm blew up like a balloon for days," he said. 5 days later, I'm rushed to the hospital with a 104-degree fever. I'm sitting there telling the doctor, I got bit by a snake. Can you imagine? They pumped him full of antibiotics, and thank God the snake was devenomized, though Savage wasn't so sure about that part. 12 days later, the snake died. He said, laughing, "He was devenomized, but maybe I wasn't." Brock Lesnar versus Braun Strowman versus Kane. Brock Lesnar is probably the last guy you'd ever want to mess with in real life. At Royal Rumble 2018, WWE put him in a triple threat match for the Universal Championship against Kane and Braun Strowman. Braun had been losing steam after dropping his last singles match to Brock in a pretty underwhelming showing. But during this triple threat, things got intense when Braun hit Brock with a stiff knee, maybe trying to come off as strong. Brock didn't like that at all, so he fired back with a real punch to let him know he'd crossed the line. Kevin Nash versus Jean-Pierre Lafitte, aka PCO. This was a wild clash from the WWF days that got real messy between two big dudes. Diesel aka Kevin Nash and Jean-Pierre Lafitte aka PCO. This wasn't just any match. It was a powder keg waiting to explode during Diesel's monster WWF Championship run. These two already had bad blood going into their title bout. The night before, they'd gone at it, and Lafitte wasn't happy about losing clean to Diesel. They changed the finish to a double countout, but word is things got heated backstage with some serious arguing. So, when they squared up again the very next night, the tension was thicker than a Montreal snowstorm. Things took a turn when Lafitte, in a move that felt more personal than planned, dropped a top rope leg drop right on Diesel's head with his whole backside slamming into Nash's skull. Ouch. Nash wasn't having it. He fired back with a couple of stiff punches to Lafitte's face and body, turning the match into this weird half-scripted, half-real brawl. It was like watching a bar fight with wrestling tights. They eventually pulled it together long enough for Diesel to hit his signature jackknife powerbomb and pin Lafitte, but man, it was chaos getting there. JBL versus Blue Meanie. John Bradshaw Layfield had a reputation for being one of the biggest backstage bullies during the late 90s and early 2000s. That reputation seemed to show itself on June 21, 2005, during the big WWE vs. ECW brawl at the One Night Stand pay-per-view. WWE had scripted the chaos, but JBL appeared to go off script and made a beeline for Blue Meanie.
And Al was trying to get between them, but John got past him.
Word was going around that JBL didn't like some comments Meanie had made online, so he took it out on him with some legit stiff shots. The footage doesn't show everything clearly, but Meanie ended up busted open. The hits dislodged staples he still had in his head from a previous cage match. A few weeks later on SmackDown, Meanie got some payback. Steve Richards, his friend, cracked JBL open with a chair to help Meanie score the win. Charlotte vs. Nia Jax. This was one of the weirdest in-ring moments that had everyone buzzing. Two pals, Charlotte Flair and Nia Jax, had a match go completely sideways. These two are legit friends, hyping each other up on social media before and after this wild night, which makes what happened even crazier. It was a WWE match that started like any other, but things got awkward fast. You could tell something was off when Charlotte and Nia just stopped selling each other's moves. Instead, they started throwing real strikes, and those were hard ones.
Is very much mistaken. Tactics, we've seen everything.
Oh my God!
Charlotte, in particular, looked pissed, and the tension was so obvious it was like watching a scripted fight turn into a street brawl. Fans noticed immediately, and the internet lost it as both women were trending worldwide because you couldn't miss how real it got. No one knows exactly what sparked the breakdown, but for a moment it was like they forgot the script and just went at it. They eventually got back on track, but that bizarre, unscripted exchange left everyone talking. Goldberg versus William Regal. By February 1998, Goldberg was on a rocket to superstardom, tearing through everyone in his path with his undefeated streak. He was set to face William Regal on Nitro, and fans expected another quick squash. But this one went way different. Instead of a short match, Goldberg and Regal ended up having a long and surprisingly competitive bout. At the time, Goldberg was still green and only really trained for quick matches. That's all he was ready for. Regal, on the other hand, seemed to have his own plan. Some say he wasn't too thrilled with Goldberg's limited skill set and decided to expose him on live TV by making him look out of his depth.
Up goes Regal. Now that's going to make him angry.
After the match, Regal said he was just following orders to have a 6-minute match and that Goldberg couldn't hang. Either way, he got fired right after. Perry Saturn versus Mike Bell. Most wrestling fans probably don't know the name Mike Bell, unless they've heard this one wild story. Bell was a local talent who worked a match against Perry Saturn before Raw, back when WWE would tape matches or run dark matches before the main show. Things went south fast when Bell messed up a move and Saturn lost it. He started laying into Bell with some really stiff shots and basically beat him up for real.
Vince and everybody was most pissed about was this.
Throw him out to try to hurt him.
Kurt Angle later said WWE was furious because Saturn could have opened them up to lawsuits. That's when they hit him with the weird, moppy storyline as punishment. Hardcore Holly and Charlie Haas versus Rene Dupree and Kenzo Suzuki. Hardcore Holly had a bit of a reputation backstage for being a bully and rubbing people the wrong way. Rene Dupree found that out the hard way after the two had a falling out over a parking ticket Dupree got while using Holly's rental car. They were in a tag match at a house show with their partners, but things went sideways fast. As soon as they were in the ring together, Holly started going after Dupree for real and didn't hold back. The story leaked online back in the early days of the internet, but WWE didn't do anything to punish Holly for it. Andre the Giant versus Bam Bam Bigelow. House shows are usually a lot looser than what you see on TV since there aren't any strict storylines to follow. WWE might try to carry over some TV stuff, but at the end of the day, it's a one-off for the live crowd. A lot of fans were surprised to find out that Bam Bam Bigelow left WWE during his first run in the 80s because of heat with Andre the Giant.
Well, here, Roger, there may be a reversal of the decision.
The hands of Bobby Heenan. This is it.
The two didn't get along, and Andre started working stiff on purpose to hurt him. Things got bad enough that Bigelow decided to walk away and didn't come back for years. Booker T vs. Batista. Booker T and Batista are two of WWE's biggest names, both with stacked careers full of world titles and big moments. Booker made his name in WCW before joining WWE, while Batista was built from the ground up in the company. On the surface, it looked like they got along fine during their time together, but that wasn't always the case. Back when Batista was blowing up as a top star, Booker felt like he was getting a little too full of himself. He didn't like the way Batista was carrying himself and decided to call him out on it.
Men a lot of times don't agree with each other. It was all about respect for the business.
Things boiled over during a SummerSlam 2006 commercial shoot, and the two ended up getting into a legit fight. Some say the fight was even, but most people backstage believed Booker got the better of it. The Great Khali versus the Big Show. You don't often see two legit 7-footers throw down, but it almost went down for real in WWE. This wasn't about bad blood and was instead more like a professional disagreement. Big Show had noticed that Khali was using some of his signature moves and mannerisms, and he wasn't happy about it. Things got heated backstage when Show confronted him, and it nearly turned into a full-blown brawl. As they started to square up, Big Show tripped over a chair, which gave Khali the upper hand for a moment. Before it got too wild, a bunch of people jumped in and pulled them apart. Eventually, things cooled off and the tension faded. Jacques Rougeau changes Dynamite Kid's mouth. The British Bulldogs were one of the best tag teams of the 80s, with Davey Boy Smith and the Dynamite Kid bringing a powerful, hard-hitting style that changed the game. They even won the WWF World Tag Team titles and were seen as one of the top teams worldwide. One of their later rivals was the Rougeau brothers from Canada. Davey Boy and Dynamite were known for working pretty stiff in the ring, sometimes even hurting their opponents on purpose. They also liked to mess with their co-workers backstage, and the Rougeau brothers were often their target. It got so bad that Jacques Rougeau, who later became famous as the Mountie, decided to fight back. He grabbed a roll of quarters and hit Dynamite Kid right in the face backstage. The hit was brutal as it knocked all of the Kid's front teeth out. While some might say it was a cheap shot, most folks in the WWE locker room agreed. Dynamite had it coming. After that, it's said he didn't bully anyone that badly again. Kurt Angle versus Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero and Kurt Angle had some great matches together, including a really solid one at WrestleMania 2006 that doesn't get enough credit. Both were incredible in the ring, but Eddie was known to have a bit of a temper and was a total perfectionist who took things very seriously. After a tough moment during a match, Eddie headed backstage and accused Angle of hitting him too hard. Angle denied even getting involved in any of the rough stuff. That just made Eddie angrier, and he tried to go after Angle, but other wrestlers stepped in and held him back until things calmed down. Ric Flair confronts Eric Bischoff. When Eric Bischoff was running things in WCW, he and Ric Flair didn't get along at all. There was one time Flair skipped a TV taping to go to his son's wrestling tournament, and Bischoff went off saying he was going to sue Flair for everything he had and leave him homeless. Jump ahead to the early 2000s when they ended up working together again in WWE. Flair was still holding on to that bad blood and wanted to settle things once and for all. With Arn Anderson nearby, Flair confronted Bischoff and slapped him. They were seen as total enemies back then, but over the years, they've managed to bury the hatchet. Chris Jericho versus Shane McMahon. If you are a wrestling fan, you will be aware of the term receipt. It refers to a retaliatory strike delivered when a wrestler believes their opponent has hit them too hard or crossed a line in the ring. If you look up this word in the dictionary, you will find the incident involving Chris Jericho and Shane McMahon as the first example. The two superstars collided during the 2016 WWE Survivor Series in the traditional 5-on-5 Team Raw versus Team SmackDown elimination match. However, during the match, Shane McMahon, known for his enthusiastic but sometimes unpolished in-ring style, landed several stiff punches on Jericho. Frustrated by McMahon's overly stiff punches, Jericho responded with a real dropkick from hell to send a message. Jericho later recounted the incident on the From the Top Rope podcast, explaining that he hit Shane's face with a Jean-Claude Van Damme double kick from the second rope before telling him to calm the fuck down. Floyd Mayweather versus Big Show. In 2007, one of the greatest professional boxers, Floyd Mayweather Jr., appeared on WrestleMania 24 for one of those celeb versus WWE superstars matchups. Floyd was paired up in a high-profile storyline against a man who is 5 feet and probably 150 kilograms bigger than him, The Big Show. The storyline was supposed to be playful and scripted to hype both personalities. And yeah, spoilers alert, it didn't go that way. Before the event, tensions reportedly flared backstage because Big Show allegedly said something disrespectful to Mayweather, who is known to be very protective of his reputation and boxing skills. When the match started, Mayweather, who was frustrated by the antics, actually punched Big Show for real. The punch was hard and genuine and visibly stunned Big Show. Thankfully, the Bugman was professional enough not to lash out, and the match went on as scripted. Sin Cara versus Del Rio. Sin Cara and Alberto Del Rio were both top luchador-style wrestlers in WWE around 2011 to 2012. Both had worked together in WWE's cruiserweight division, but their relationship backstage was reportedly tense. There were rumors that Sin Cara was struggling to keep up with the demanding schedule and the physicality of WWE's style. Many superstars felt like he had a habit of quitting matches when he felt even the smallest of nibbles. During a Monday Night Raw episode on July 8, 2013, this shimmering tension would boil up to the surface. Sin Cara, after being dropped out of the ring from the top rope, visibly signaled to the referee that he had hurt his finger. The match ended up rather abruptly, and Del Rio retained his championship. However, he wasn't happy that Sin Cara gave up so easily and decided to take things in his own hands. Del Rio stormed out, grabbed Sin Cara, and chucked him back in the ring before proceeding to throw some really real-looking kicks to the rib of his Mexican counterpart. Steve-O versus Umaga. Back in the early 2000s, Jackass became a huge cultural phenomenon, and everyone was glued to MTV to watch it. And when Jackass No. 2 became a hit in 2006, the WWE decided to cash on this popularity by proposing a match with Umaga. That October, Steve-O and Chris Pontius showed up on WWE with their usual buzzed-out-of-their-mind attitude. They did get into the ring with Umaga, but it was quickly clear that they were taking things far less seriously than they should have. They laughed it off in the ring, which reportedly pissed off the WWE officials. Not knowing how to sell moves or stay down, they turned the segment into a mess. And this didn't go unpunished as the Big Samoan Bulldozer. Umaga hit Steve-O with some nasty slams, kicks, chops, and topped it off with a big top rope splash. Later, in a YouTube video, Steve-O recalled the incident and said it was the worst beating he ever took.